Hello everyone! Here are my top 10 creepypasta stories that I thought were the scariest. Keep in mind, I know many people will disagree with my list, but this is all my opinion and were the ones that I personally found the scariest. I'm also aware that there are many other creepypastas out there, but I haven't read them. These were the ones that did it for me. Enjoy! This story follows the journey of an amateur writer who visits the house of a lady who supposedly has a story of which he can borrow from. Her story consists of a floppy disk that contains a file called smile.jpg, in which when opened shows a sadistic image of a dog that causes the viewer to go insane, which eventually leads to death. The only way to avoid this outcome is to spread the word, in which smiledog would come into your dreams and tell you this, and also the email that was sent to you with the smile.jpg image, where it pleads you to pass the image on. This pasta was definitely a creepy read at first, but I think that what got to me most was the actual image. I mean, looking back now it really isn't so bad, but seeing it for the first time, it is a bit creepy, you got to admit. The rake can be compared to the likes of Slender Man in that it's an urban legend that might possibly be out there, but it probably isn't. However, there are many videos and stories over the net with people claiming they have encountered the creature. The story involves a family trying to get away from said creature when it appeared at a little girl's bedside one time before bed. The creature haunts the family during the story, and the dad tries to get footage of the creature appearing by his bedside. The whole take and look of the creature I think is the scariest part. Even some of the videos that are fake are pretty creepy at times and just gives you that slight bit of uncertainty of what might be out there.
No shit, humans can like too. The stupidest story I've ever heard.
Read it.
That shit was scary.
The story follows an old lady whose husband had died and her dog was the only companion she had left. Every night the old lady would put her hand at the side of the bed where the dog would lick it to signify he was there for her. However, this night was different. The dog started whimpering throughout the night and she put her hand over the side of the bed for him to lick, and the dog just did that, so she thought nothing of it and went back to sleep. She was again awoken a second and third time by the dog's whimpering, but he still continued licking her hand. So again she thought nothing of the dog's anxiety and went back to sleep. She awoke in the morning to hear a dripping sound coming through the house. She put her hand down for the dog to lick, but he had gone. She went through the kitchen to see where the dripping sound was coming from, but couldn't find its whereabouts. She gave up and went to the bathroom for a shower. It was to her horror that her dog was strung up by the line, its blood dripping into the bathtub below. She looked to the mirror where something had been written in the dog's blood, the words, "Humans can lick too." A fairly simple story, but one that got to me and provided a decent scare for the night. This pasta focuses on a kids show taken down from Nickelodeon when the content proved way too inappropriate to be shown on a kids show. The show followed Happy Appy, an Apu who helped kids when they had hurt themselves. The story follows a young man who has DVD copies of the show and watches them to find to his horror how sadistic the cartoon was. Things are pretty normal for the first few episodes, but then it turns to the worst with themes of murder and kidnapping. The story is very long and is probably the longest creepypasta I've ever read. It also does get a tad bit ridiculous at some parts, but nevertheless, there are some chilling moments throughout this pasta, proving it to make it on my list.
Some weird stuff's been happening while I've come out of my room. Setting up this camera to catch anything. I'll keep you updated.
This pasta was probably the first one I found out through a reading of it on YouTube, and goddamn was it a good one. I really wasn't expecting much from this pasta, but it was awesome. The story follows a man working at a gas station where recently a new guy by the name of Jeremy has joined. Jeremy is described as a bit of a creep by the main protagonist and is clarified when his boss asks him to work late to check the security camera footage to see who had been stealing the oil after dark. While checking out the footage, everything seems fine and dandy with regular customers coming in and the occasional oddball that doesn't strike too much out of the ordinary. That is until our protagonist realises the same people keep coming in and buying the same thing every hour, repeating the precise actions they followed when they last came in. At first, he passes it off as a trick Jeremy could have done by looping the footage, but that isn't the case at all. A time when the camera goes by and you can see the light outside getting darker and darker, turning to night while the same people come in every hour, buying the exact same things and following the exact same routine. The story can get rather confusing at times, but is well worth a read and is sure to send some shivers up your spine.
Hey, check this out.
The first gaming pasta that I have on my list, sonic.exe. This story consists of a boy who receives a Sonic game cartridge in his mail from a friend who tells him to get rid of the game and that he, meaning Sonic, was coming for him. The boy really doesn't pay much attention to what his friend says and instead immediately starts to play the game. He already notices that there is something up, the blood red water on the title screen, the murmuring of Sega 666. He keeps playing and plays as Tails, Knuckles and Dr. Eggman, all of which end up in their inevitable death by Sonic. There's been a game made for this pasta, which you can see has been playing throughout this video, and it definitely lives up to the story. Much like Happy Appy, this pasta is very long, so I'm going to try summarise it down for you. A Canadian blogger decides to check out an old low-budget TV show he saw as a kid back in 1999. One of the episodes he remembers featured live-action hands on a table, where suddenly one of the bigger hands repeatedly stabbed a smaller hand with a pair of scissors, where a muffled scream of a child could be heard in the background. Things get darker though with the introduction of Mr. Bear and his sinister antics on the show, such as kidnapping and murdering the children who appeared on the show. The protagonist investigates and gets involved in a story of shocking truth, finding out who Mr. Bear truly is. Definitely a knockout pasta for sure, very intriguing and a good long read.
I couldn't really think of an appropriate skit for normal porn for normal people, so how about more of Douglas dancing?
This is a weird one but a goodie at the same time. A man is sent a link to the website normalpornfornormalpeople.com, where the caption of the email says to pass the site on for the good of mankind. He visits the website where he finds some extraordinary strange videos which begin to get weirder and more disturbing each time, until he gets to the last video, which is basically a snuff film featuring an ape and a woman bound down to a bed. Sick stuff, right? Of course there's a lot more to the story, but you should check it out as it is one of those pastas which can actually sound believable at times. Hell, there is even a site for normal porn for normal people. It does have weird videos on there, but nowhere near to the extent of what is described in the actual story. This pasta is awesome and definitely got to me when reading through it. Check it out. Here we go, here's a pasta that completely shunned me. Well, in all honesty, the video on YouTube is the thing that really got to me, but the story is well done as well. Basically, we have a lost episode of Mickey Mouse that is found and is believed to only be 3 minutes long, with Mickey just walking down a street while someone sounds like they are banging on a piano in the background. The video then cuts to white noise for the remainder of the clip. A reviewer by the name Leonard Moulton reviewed the cartoon to see if it could be part of the complete series. He realised it was too bad to be part of the DVD, so he kept a digital copy of it for himself. That's when he realised, upon viewing the time limit for the clip on his computer, the short actually went on for over 9 minutes. He rewatched it again, and after the 6th minute, things started going crazy with a build-up of what sounded like noise, which eventually turned into this blood-curdling scream. The animation was going crazy, and the buildings Mickey were walking past were all over the place and doing impossible things for animation at the time. Leonard left the room very much disturbed from what he had seen, and sent in an employee to finish watching the rest of the clip. The employee stumbled out of the room completely pale and said real suffering is not known, until he promptly pulled out the gun from the security officer nearby and killed himself. Leonard was consulted with and eventually told that there was Russian text at the end of the video that translated to "The sights of hell bring its viewers back in." As I mentioned before, this pasta scared the shit out of me. I couldn't sleep for days after reading and watching the video that came with it. Mind you, I was about 13 years old, but nevertheless, this pasta deserves its high place on my list.
Next up, I have my #1 pick for the top 10 creepypastas. Oh, sorry, I gotta take that. Hello?
Yes, it can be considered overrated. Yes, you may be shaking your head in shame and finding out this is my #1 pick, but by God did this story get to me. We follow a man on an internship for SpongeBob SquarePants. One day, he has to watch a particular episode titled Squidward's Suicide. Things start off Squidward practicing for a rehearsal for an upcoming concert later that night. When the time arrives, he plays but is essentially booed off stage by all the audience, who all seem to have blood red eyes, including SpongeBob, which was very out of character for him. Squidward then walks home, and in between all this, there are various silences and noises. Squidward is then sat on his bed sobbing while various still frame images pop up on screen. They reverse the cartoon to see what had just popped up, and what they saw shocked them. There were still images of dead children that had been murdered in a very graphic manner that not only appeared once, but another 2 times throughout the sitting of the show. A deep voice berates Squidward saying, "Do it," over and over again, while Squidward looks into the camera with his bloodshot eyes. He eventually kills himself with his shotgun on screen. Much like Suicide Mouse, this one got to me and I couldn't sleep for days, let alone look at SpongeBob episodes the same again. However, this is my personal pick for #1 for my top 10 scary creepypastas.